Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7. My name is Brian Liddy and I'm joined this evening by Maureen Watt. Maureen, how are you this evening?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, just
Just
give
beginning to see the autumn leaves falling in that wind, so definitely
yeah,
autumnal today up
yeah,
here.
yeah. My favourite season is just around the corner. So, Maureen, you were a former minister for mental health in the Scottish Government, and you were an MSP for Aberdeen South and North Kincardine from 2011 to 2021, from when you retired. And you're also, as I keep saying, you're a very frequent contributor here at Broadcasting Scotland. Thank you again for giving us your time and your expertise.
Not at all. Pleased to be joining you tonight.
Thank you. So, on to the Ukraine daily update. It's day 574. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky implored world leaders gathered at the UN General Assembly on Tuesday to stand united against Russia's invasion and said Moscow had to be pushed back so the world could turn to solving pressing global challenges. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said countries such as Russia are creating a world of insecurity for everyone after its invasion of Ukraine. 48 Ukrainian children from the occupied Ukrainian regions of Donetsk, Luhansk and Zaporizhia, who had been illegally deported to Russia, have arrived in Belarus. Belta reported the removal of the children from Ukraine was organised by a Belarusian charity supported by Alexander Lukashenko. On Tuesday, Olena Zelenska, Ukraine's First Lady, speaking on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, urged world leaders to help return the more than 19,000 Ukrainian children forcibly taken to Russia, where she said they are being indoctrinated and deprived of their national identity. President Biden said the UN gathering this week is darkened by the shadow of war, which he described as an illegal war of conquest without provocation by Russia against Ukraine. The US Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, said Tuesday air defense will continue to be Ukraine's greatest need in the war against Russia. Poland's foreign ministry has summoned the Ukrainian ambassador and conveyed Poland's strong protest against statements made by Volodymyr Zelensky at the UN General Assembly, referring to the grain export situation. Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki warned that Poland could ban additional Ukrainian grain imports. Ukrainian Trade Representative Taras Kachka responded that Ukraine wants to reach an understanding with neighbouring countries on imports of agricultural products through negotiations. The Ukrainian Air Force said it shot down 17 out of 24 drones overnight. Ukraine said that Russia hit an oil refinery in Kremchuk, causing a fire and halting operations. Mikhail Razvoyev, the Moscow-installed governor of Sevastopol, has claimed Russia prevented a missile attack on Crimea's Sevastopol. Mats Lundqvist, the investigator in the Swedish investigation into the Nord Stream sabotage last year, said today that it is at a sensitive stage and he hopes to conclude it before the end of the year. Vyacheslav Gladkov, governor of the Belgorod region in Russia, has reported that three settlements in the region have lost power as a result of cross-border shelling by Ukrainian armed forces. Russia's defence minister Sergei Shoigu has said that cooperation between Russia and Iran has reached a new level. The UK will supply tens of thousands more artillery shells to Ukraine this year, the UK Ministry of Defence announced on Tuesday. So that's today's update, Maureen. Was there anything in there that caught your eye?
Yeah, well, I think the fact that President Zelensky is at the UN and they're obviously keeping them world leaders updated, but also I'm sure lobbying for more help is really interesting, and I hope it's fruitful. The Ukrainian army and defence forces seem to be making quite a lot of progress, I think, since I was last on this programme. And that's all to be welcomed. As I said, then I think the more the advances they can make before winter is really important. So, yeah, it looks not promising, that's not the word, but progress is being made, shall we say, in halting the Russians.
Thank you, Maureen. Since we started a wee bit late, I'll go straight on to the next item. Rishi Sunak has announced a major rollback on his government's climate policies, postponing some of the UK's most vital green targets. At a press conference in Downing Street, the Prime Minister announced the UK would halt the plan to end the sale of new gas boilers by 2035 and would push back the deadline for selling new petrol and diesel cars by 5 years from 2030 to 2035. Before his speech, Sunak was facing a barrage of criticism, not only from opposition parties but also from business groups and many of his fellow Conservative MPs. The changes that Sunak announced mainly affect policy in England, as net zero commitments in Scotland are devolved. However, his changes will have implications for the Scottish Government. The main changes Sunak announced are: new cars with combustion engines were due to be banned from sale by 2030. This has been pushed back to 2035. The UK will still be heavily reliant on imported gas, as Sunak announced his plans to significantly weaken the plan to phase out the installation of gas boilers by 2035, instead aiming for only an 80% phase out. He also said the 2026 ban on off-grid oil boilers would be delayed to 2035, with only an 80% phase-out target at that date. The UK has some of the most badly insulated housing stock in Europe. Sunak announced he will no longer require homeowners and landowners in England to meet energy efficiency targets. There had been plans to fine landlords who failed to upgrade their properties to a certain level of energy efficiency, but these have now been dropped. The Scottish Greens said the UK Government is offering a blank cheque to polluters and proposing climate surrender. Scottish Greens Environment spokesperson Mark Ruskell MSP said, "In one climate-denying speech, Rishi Sunak has just told the world that his government has given up on net zero, that it has run out of ideas, and it intends to squeeze every last drop out of the economy and the North Sea." SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn MP said, "This reckless plan from the Tories puts at risk Scotland's economic future. We are a renewable energy powerhouse and there is a global energy race to net zero. If the UK takes us out of that race, the damage will be catastrophic." He went on to say, "All the evidence tells us that we can protect and create jobs in Scotland by ensuring that we get the energy transition right. But the Tories now don't even seem to want to have a transition, just a cliff edge." Labour's decision to roll back on their own net zero investment plans has opened the door to the Tories weaponising our future energy, and they've decided to run through it. So, Maureen, during the Prime Minister's speech today at number 10, he posed a question, and I'd like to just ask you the very same question, if that's okay. So, Maureen, how can it be right that British citizens are being told to sacrifice more than others? I think this is a reference to the fact that during a cost of living crisis, these green net zero charges would end up costing consumers and households.
Well, the short answer to that is that they're not being asked to do more than other countries. Just a few days ago, Germany took the decision with some opposition, but the German government parliament took the decision to ban gas or oil energy in new housing, so that they have to look for alternative sources of energy when building houses. That's the kind of thing that this country should be doing as well. And, I take all the points about, we've been in the lead. I don't think we're in the lead anymore. Other countries are catching up, and Britain has, done all the low-hanging fruit stuff. We really need to be thinking and acting on really radical changes, because climate change hasn't gone away. Net zero hasn't gone away. The climate crisis, we can all see, is getting so very much worse. And it was very interesting that Rishi Sunak has decided to make this announcement today. The Westminster Parliament is in recess. He could have gone to the US, where world leaders are meeting to discuss climate change, but he didn't. So I think he's obviously been planning this for a while, probably since the 3 by-elections, the Uxbridge by-election. He'll have had focus groups and all that kind of thing telling him that this might be a populist policy that will get the Tories back into government. Well, that is just the worst sort of political leadership that you could ever think. We desperately need leaders who will lead. And on this issue, more probably than anything else, we need to have a government committed wholly to tackling climate change and to lead. And I mean, some of the things he was coming out with, I mean, I'd never heard before. Forcing car sharing on people, taxing a tax on meat, that you have to have 7 bins. I mean, I've never heard any of these things before. Maybe that's happening in England, but it's certainly not something that I've heard happening here, because councils are in charge of refuse collection and dividing that out. So I was just thought, if anybody had thought that Sunak had a shred of leadership in it, he's just blown it to smithereens today.
Thanks, Maureen. And it's interesting from what you said about him bringing out things that haven't been mentioned before or have never been heard of before. Is it worth reminding people that Rishi Sunak technically has no mandate? The only reason he's the Prime Minister is because he was voted as the leader of the Conservative Party by Conservative Party members, which tend to be white, older men. But he hasn't actually gone to the electorate yet, and yet he's bringing out, changing these key policies.
Well, I suppose technically you could say that about Hamza Yusuf as well. But I think, he must have had the wrong age group in these focus groups, because, young people are so committed to climate change and doing something about it that is he going to get any votes from younger generations? So I just think this is a nail in the coffin of the Tory party. And it's no wonder they're so split, because they cannot agree on a way forward. And, a party of government like that doesn't deserve to win the next election. But it'll be interesting to see, Brian, in the next few days, what Keir Starmer's response to this will be. Sincerely hope that they take a completely different direction. But so often on so many things recently, he has more or less been taking the Tory line, but maybe just a bit more wishy-washy. So it will be interesting to see what response Keir Starmer comes out with on this.
Yeah, watch this space. You're touching on quite a lot of things that are going to be coming up on the show, so hopefully we'll have a chance to kind of open things up a wee bit more on what you've been saying there already. Thank you. But I'll move on to the next item. The UK government was notable by its absence on Wednesday from a key statement pledging ambitious action on the climate crisis, from which a group of countries, of which it is normally a leading member. The High Ambition Coalition of countries, which aims to push the world to swifter cuts on greenhouse gas emissions, issued a call for faster, stronger action on the climate to cause emissions to peak by 2025, and a plan to put the world on course to meet the goals of the 2015 Paris Agreement. The UK, which was a founding member of the coalition, was not among the 17 signatories, which included France, Spain, Kenya and Chile. Rishi Sunak was not in attendance in New York when the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres welcomed global and civic leaders to discuss the crisis at his Climate Ambition Summit, opening on Wednesday on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Instead, the UK Prime Minister was hatching his U-turn on the climate with a scope and timing that has left other countries and green experts aghast. The UK's international reputation for leadership on the climate crisis, burnished by hosting the COP26 UN Climate Summit in Glasgow in 2021, is in danger, according to prominent climate experts. Rachel Kite, Dean Emerita of the Fletcher School at Tufts University in the US and a former UN climate envoy said, if Prime Minister Sunak in London, avoiding the global stage, does start watering down UK climate policies, he is doing so against advice and out of sync with the international consensus. Making net zero a scapegoat for years of the government mismanaging of the economy and energy policy is a dangerous stunt. Maureen, the previous item that we talked about showed that Sunak had backed down on net zero, and now it seems he's skipped, and now he's skipped the UN Climate Crisis Summit. Why do you think he stayed away from the summit? Was it to reduce his carbon footprint and do the right thing?
I doubt it, because did he not fly to California for his summer holidays with his family? So I don't think that will be top of his mind. As I said previously, I think he's obviously been hatching this plan probably over the summer holidays, and him making this speech and going to the climate summit would have been a complete contradiction in terms, in actions, I suppose. He couldn't have gone to the climate change and then made this speech, or the other way around. He would be even more discredited than he is currently. So I don't even know who's representing the UK government at this climate change conference, but it is interesting that Hamza Yousaf thought it was worthwhile going, and I'm glad about that, because it's keeping Scotland in the forefront of climate change decisions and climate change actions, which was highlighted at the summit in Glasgow, and shows our continuing commitment to tackling climate change, in complete contrast to what's happening in the UK government, and especially today.
Thank you, Maureen. And just quickly, during the Tory leadership debate race, it was in a debate. He was asked about his climate or his environmentalist credentials, and he said that he listened to his daughters on that front because they wanted him to tackle climate change. Do you think he'll be able to look his daughters in the eye when he gets home from work today?
I think he was asked that sort of question in the question session after his speech today, and he said, his commitment was to the British public, who are suffering. Well, they're suffering because of his and other Tory leaders' policies over the last year. So he kind of flannelled that. Yeah, I'd like to be in a fly in the wall when he goes home for his tea tonight.
Yes. Short shrift, hopefully. So I'll move on to the next item, which is related. In New York today, First Minister Hamza Yousaf will be attending the United Nations Climate Ambition Summit, attending 2 sessions on climate action and net zero policy implementation with other leaders. Earlier, the First Minister discussed opportunities for collaboration on tackling gender-based violence with Prime Minister of Iceland, Katrin Jakobsdóttir, in New York today. First Minister Hamza Yousaf said it was a pleasure to speak with Prime Minister Katrin Jakobsdóttir about opportunities for collaboration on tackling gender-based violence and promoting gender equality, both domestically and internationally. When it comes to tackling violence and improving the lives of women and girls, it is crucial that we continue to learn from initiatives introduced by other countries such as Iceland. He went on to say Scotland is making great strides in challenging violence against women and promoting gender equality through our groundbreaking Equally Safe strategy. We recently announced our commitment to bring forward legislation to criminalise misogynistic conduct. Our gold standard domestic abuse laws criminalise psychological domestic abuse and coercive and controlling behaviour, as well as physical abuse, giving more powers to police and courts to punish perpetrators and protect people, the majority of whom are women, from harm. He went on to say, I was pleased to tell the Prime Minister about how we have been inspired by the Icelandic Barnhouse model. which provides holistic child-centred support to child victims of sexual abuse. This will deliver support to child victims and witnesses of harm and abuse, and will also transform the way we deliver justice, care and recovery for children who have experienced trauma. I look forward to our continued collaboration between Scotland and Iceland on issues like this, and we will continue to take inspiration from countries such as Iceland wherever it can make a difference. So, Maureen, that item there was mostly shows that although the First Minister is in Iceland to deal with the climate crisis, are you okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yeah, sorry.
yes.
But obviously he's meeting ministers, international figures, and they're talking about other important things as well. This kind of reminds me of COP26 when the then First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, was they tried to sideline her from COP26, and she actually had a glowing COP26 that showed Scotland on a world stage with international leaders. Do you think this is maybe similar, something going on here?
I think it's really important, although the UK government, of course, as we know, would like to stop us uh, as a government in Scotland and as a parliament taking part in international uh, discussions, even about trade and business. But it's really important to have a presence, although we haven't got a seat at the top table yet, at these sorts of events, because, as you say, we can meet people at the sidelines, have meetings with leaders of other countries, not just to discuss climate change, but as you said, issues like gender based violence. And while Scotland um, does have an excellent record in terms of legislating to prevent gender based violence through various bills that have gone through Parliament in previous sessions, there is still always room for improvement. I've heard of the Bauhaus model before, and you know, you don't want to be reinventing the wheel. If something's working in other countries, then that provides a basis for legislation in our own country where we can tailor it to the needs of Scots. So it's good that these kind of things are being discussed. But I think he'll be back home soon for First Minister's questions tomorrow. I haven't heard that someone else is taking it.
Yes, and just a wee compare and contrast then between the Prime Minister in the Westminster Government and our First Minister in the Scottish Government. Hamza Yousaf is due to give a speech on the opening day, and I'm told that he flew economy class in a commercial flight. But Sunak's government has a net zero target of 2050, whereas Hamza Yousaf's Scottish government has a net zero target to be met by 2045. Sunak is missing from the UN summit while Hamza Yousaf is attending in person. I haven't even heard anybody in Westminster say that the Prime Minister is going to be joining in by Zoom or anything like that, which makes me think that he probably isn't, because I'm sure they would tell us if he was. What would you like? These differences are stark, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. And I was thinking after his speech today, and shifting the goalposts and targets, we need to have targets. And when they were set, I'm sure they were thought to be realistic. Now, there have been some bumps to that, COVID being one, the war in Ukraine another, but surely that should spur us on to be more ambitious in what we're doing rather than less. And, there's a huge program of um, insulation and renovation of housing that needs to go on, which will create jobs. And I was just thinking about the car industry. The car industry is already fully signed up to be producing electric cars and not diesel cars. And, are they going to change their business model just because Rishi Sunak says that we can put a brake on meeting our targets? If you don't have targets, then there's not going to be the push towards meeting them. Okay, sometimes targets are missed, but you have to have them in place in the first place. And if we keep putting the target back, then the impetus that's needed to to meet these targets and to make the changes is just not going to be there. And business always cries out for stability. This is total instability and upsetting to business who will really have to go back to the drawing board in many cases. I mean, those electricians, for example, or plumbers who are taking courses to install different types of heating than we've had in the past. What are they going to fork out the money to do that now, to retrain? All these kind of things are really creating a mayhem, which just seems to be the hallmark of this government.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. I've actually read two so far today major complaints directed directly at the Prime Minister from corporate bodies, one of which was the Ford Motor Company, and they said basically what Scotland has been saying about the transfer from fossil fuels to renewables. They're saying, look, you're putting everything at risk if you don't let us meet the targets sooner. It's going to jeopardise their profits as well as make climate crisis worse. But I sense that we'd better crack on with the next item. The UK's annual inflation rate in August fell to 6.7%, despite a sharp rise in average fuel prices for motorists, after the Office for National Statistics said slower increases in the cost of food helped the annual inflation rate, as measured by the Consumer Prices Index, drop from the 6th month in a row from 6.8% in July. The fall in the inflation rate to the lowest level since February last year came despite city expectations of an increase to 7%. Economists said the figure could make the Bank of England's interest rates decision on Thursday a closer call. Markets had been forecasting the bank would make a 15th increase in borrowing costs in its most aggressive tightening cycle for decades, but today's inflation figures have increased speculation about whether there would be a rise. The UK remains an international outlier, stuck on the highest inflation rate among G7 economies, with the Eurozone announcing an interest rate of 5.2% yesterday. So, Maureen, neither of us are economists, I know, and we're told that inflation is falling, but that's to 6.7%, but that's misleading, isn't it? It implies that prices are falling in the shops, while prices are still going up. They're just not going up as fast. They're going up by 6.7% instead of 7%. There is still inflation. So, but do you think people will feel better off with this drop in inflation?
No, I don't think people will feel better off at all. And you described it absolutely as I would have done. That it just means that prices are increasing less fast than they did the previous month. I do hope that the Bank of England on Thursday pauses with interest rate rises to see what effect that might have over the next month, because people are really, really suffering. People are still having to renegotiate their mortgages at this very high level of interest rates. So it would be interesting to see what effect it would have if the Bank of England paused any increases for a month and see what happens there, because people are losing their jobs, businesses are closing because of the high interest rates and because of the high costs of fuel. We're coming into winter where they're going to be using more fuel. So I do hope that the Bank of England heeds this slight fall, but it's in no way good news for hard-pressed working families.
Thank you, Maureen. I'll move on to the next item. Children and young people have become significantly more concerned about rising prices and their family having enough money than about the environment or crime, research has found. 1 in 10 children aged 10 to 17 are unhappy with their lives, according to a study by the Children's Society. More than 2 million children in the UK are estimated in the report to be more worried about rising prices than they are about the environment, while almost 3 million do not feel positive about the future of the country or the future of the world. Future financial security, however, is the issue that most troubles the younger generation. More than 80% said they are significantly concerned about the impact that the increased cost of living will have on their family over the next 12 months. The report also shows that girls are significantly less happy than boys, with everything in their lives except for schoolwork. The report was published on the same day that a study by the food bank charity, the Trussell Trust, found half of working households on universal credit payments ran out of food last month and were unable to buy more. Universal credit, the main UK benefit for those on low incomes or out of work, is claimed by 6 million people. The basic rate is at least £140 a month below the real cost of food, energy and other basics. The study, which estimates that 700,000 people on universal credit have had to turn to charity food in the last month, also found working families on universal credit had struggled to heat their home, were more likely to skip meals and go without toiletries. Commenting on the Trussell Trust research, the SNP's social justice spokesperson, David Linden MP, said, "This research should have the Westminster establishment holding their heads in shame. The impact of the past 13 years of Tory austerity and the catastrophic repercussions of Brexit, both of which Labour now back, have left millions of families struggling to make ends meet, including working families and people with disabilities. As winter approaches and energy bills increase, the government must step up support for the most vulnerable people in our communities. Rishi Sunak should now commit to joining Trussell Trust and Joseph Rowntree Foundation's Guarantee Our Essentials campaign, which would ensure that universal credit at least covers the essentials. But this is only the beginning. The UK government must also increase benefits in line with inflation and reduce the burden of debt deductions." Mr Linden added, "The Scottish Government is committed to tackling the cost of living crisis and prevent people falling into poverty with game-changing policies like the Scottish Child Payment and Best Start grants. However, we are consistently being held back by Westminster and as such need full powers for independence to truly tackle the ongoing and ever-important issue of poverty." This morning, the one phrase that got me when I was first read this item was just that the number of children that are unhappy with their lives, that just kind of struck me as quite chilling. And that response from the SNP about the Scottish Child Payment, what was I going to say? The Scottish Child Payments has seen the biggest reduction in inequality caused by a single policy change since the collapse of the Berlin Wall. Professor Danny Dorling said today, I don't know if you heard that, he's Oxford University's School of Geography and the Environment, and he told the national newspaper that the payment would see no child go hungrier in Scotland. It's a weekly payment of £25, raised to £25 and extended to all children under 16. Dorling said it's a remarkable story, and the second remarkable story is how it's not been reported. Dorling's right, but should he be surprised?
No, absolutely not surprised that it's not being reported more widely than in the national. I mean, that's pretty strong stuff from Professor Dorling, comparing it, did you say, with the Berlin Wall fall or something? But you know, to get back to the report, 1 in 10 probably doesn't seem a lot, but it adds up to a lot of families that are really feeling the pinch, and it's impacting on how children are feeling about their lives, and that's really sad because you know your childhood should be the happiest time of your life, and you know they'll be seeing it in not having had summer holidays, not having had outings during the summer, and as you said, most chillingly, not having enough food to eat. And while the Scottish Child Payment has been a game changer, it ought to be remembered that this has been brought in because of the huge impact of Westminster policies, and the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government were not set up to mitigate the worst effects of Westminster policies. And, you know, when people complain about things not being spent on this, that, and the next thing, we shouldn't be having to spend billions, and it is billions, on making sure that more children are not living in poverty. And it is the choices of the Westminster government that are causing this poverty in the first place. In one of the G7, the fifth or sixth richest country in the world, having so many children in poverty, an absolute disgrace. And we should really be, asking ourselves what on earth is happening, and surely there's that can make things better for me and you, Brian, that independent Scotland.
Thank you, Maureen, and thanks for taking us back to the report, which is for keeping me on the straight and narrow. The other thing that struck me about that report was you've got. We're told that young people like Greta Thunberg are more concerned about the environment, and this seems to contradict that. But it's not that surprising, really, is it? Because the poverty that they're facing, the cost of living crisis that they're facing, it's in their living room, it's in their bedroom, it's in their kitchen, whereas climate change is maybe a bit abstract because it's just something at the moment that they see on television. So is that maybe the reason why they're unhappy with their lives?
I think there are many reasons why children are unhappy with their lives, and some take all these things more seriously than others. Sometimes it's the children who have got fewer other activities that keep them busy in their lives. But it was interesting that one of the points in that report that you mentioned, Brian, keep me right if I'm misquoting you, but you said that girls, something about girls were concentrating on their studies. And, I wish we would say more that education and reading books is a route out of poverty. And if children concentrate on their schoolwork and do well in school, they have got so many more life chances than if they don't. And I can't stress that enough. Okay, I was a former teacher, but I see it so often that there's not enough reading or books enough in families, and it's just so important that children read.
Well said. Thank you, Maureen.
I digress, sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. So I'll move on to the next item. Germany has banned the neo-Nazi group Hammerskins Deutschland, describing it as an extremist organisation with ties to the US that sees itself as an elite of the right-wing skinhead scene. The German organisation, believed to play a leading role in Europe's right-wing extremist scene, was an offshoot of Hammerskins Nation, an organisation founded in Texas in 1988, Germany's Interior Minister said today. The ban, which extends to the regional chapters of the group and a sub-organisation, Crew 38, was a hard blow against organised right-wing extremism, Interior Minister Nancy Faeser told reporters. It is the 20th right-wing extremist group to be made illegal in the country. The minister said the ban was accompanied by a police crackdown in which 700 officers raided the homes of 28 members across Germany, seizing far-right devotional objects as well as cash. She did not specify whether any members of the organisation were detained. With this ban, we are putting an end to the inhuman activities of an internationally active neo-Nazi association in Germany, Faeser said. This sends a clear signal against racism and anti-Semitism. Thomas Haldenwang, who heads the Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution, told the Associated Press more than 10,000 of these suspected extremists were members of the Alternative for Deutschland, or the AfD, right-wing populist political party. Maureen, this sends a clear signal against racism and anti-Semitism in Germany. But will it work? Considering that there's been a rise in far-right extremism in Germany, apparently the domestic spy agency in Germany counted 38,800 potential far-right extremists in 2022 alone. And then there was that figure in the report which said that there have been, 20 similar societies that have been cracked down on in Germany already so far.
So as someone who worked for a German company, can speak German and have visited Germany several times. I can't stress enough how important this is to German society to crack down on extreme right-wing extremism. And what it brought home to me is how the threat to security worldwide and to nations is from right wing extremism, not anything else. That is the biggest threat to countries at the moment. So the Germans taking such action on these extremism shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. What was a surprise to me reading about it, that this was an organization, as you say, founded in Texas in the States and spread worldwide. So, well, and particularly into Germany, and that they have so much influence on the party which is growing in Germany, Alternative for Deutschland, or AfD. So I think the German government is very right, very it's really good politics that they are cracking down on this. So before it gets out, anything gets out of hand. I mean, I remember holidaying in Austria and crossing the border to visit uh, Hitler's Eagle's Nest in Bavaria with my family, and we were really quite felt quite insecure and quite unsafe when there were some black people in leather on motorbikes wandering about there, and it was really quite upsetting to see it. So, yeah, I think this is something that we can expect the German government to be right on top of.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like quite a disconcerting situation that you described there. I actually kind of feel uneasy sometimes, sort of thinking that what the people say, because of what happened in Germany during the Second World War, that all the onus should be on them. As you said, this is an organisation that started in America, and then I don't know if you heard, but there's this festival in Sheringham in Norfolk, which is about the 1940s, and bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover, and people turn up dressed in outfits from the 1940s, and probably listen to Andrew's Sisters songs and things like that. But this year there were some men turned up in SS uniforms, and they were taken off, escorted out of it, and the police are investigating a reported assault that's attached. So it's kind of like every country has to be wary, and because they walk among us is an expression. But I suppose
Yeah.
I'd better move on to the next item. Sorry for that letter there. A ceasefire agreement has been reached a day after Azerbaijan launched a new military offensive against the local Armenian government in the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. The agreement was due to take effect at 1 p.m. local time and includes provisions for the local Armenian government to disband its local military in what appears to be a capitulation to Azerbaijan. The numbers of dead and wounded in Nagorno-Karabakh jumped overnight. A former head of the local government said close to 100 people had been killed and hundreds more injured after Azerbaijan launched what it described as an anti-terrorist operation in the disputed South Caucasus region. In Armenia, thousands took to the streets of the capital, Yerevan, in protest against the Azerbaijan military assault on Nagorno-Karabakh. The demonstration came amid rising discontent with Armenia's Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan, the inaction of Russian peacemakers, and the failure of Western governments to stop bloodshed. The announcement of the ceasefire in the disputed enclave today appeared to involve the de facto capitulation of local defence forces and looked set to fuel unrest in Armenia. Protesters smashed the windows of government buildings in Yerevan's central Republic Square late on Tuesday as they scuffled with police in an attempt to get inside. Security officers responded by throwing stun grenades into the crowd. Dozens of civilians and troops were killed and wounded in the mountainous South Caucasus region, according to local officials, in what the Azerbaijani authorities called the anti-terrorist operation to dismantle the long-standing Nagorno-Karabakh government and eliminate illegal Armenian military formations. Azerbaijani officials said they had reached a ceasefire agreement involving the withdrawal of all local defence units from the Nagorno-Karabakh and the surrender of arms and heavy equipment. Many in Yerevan believe that Azerbaijan's ultimate goal is to ethnically cleanse Nagorno-Karabakh, which is internationally recognised as Azerbaijani territory, of its predominantly Armenian population, estimated to number about 120,000. What is going on is an Armenian genocide, said Yuri, a protester on Republic Square. It's a genocide in the 21st century. Pashinyan, who led Armenia through its defeat in the Second Karabakh War 3 years ago, made it clear from the start of the fighting that he did not intend to authorise a military intervention to counter the Azerbaijani offensive. Russian peacekeepers, believed to number about 2,000 soldiers, appeared either powerless or disinclined to intervene during the 24 hours of conflict, as Azerbaijan seemed to rebuff international calls for peace from the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other Western diplomats. Maureen, this is a kind of story where, again, I tend to ask myself, why isn't this reported more elsewhere in the mainstream media? And of course, and then there was, it makes me think of the historic Armenian genocide in 1915, which had happened during the First World War. And again, very little seems to be known about that because it was kept under wraps at the time. I'm thinking that Azerbaijan's a dictatorship built around a family dynasty, whereas at Nagorno-Karabakh, a mountainous region, it's home to about 120,000 Christian Armenians. It seems to me also that there's a legacy of the Soviet Empire here. It was when the USSR imploded, 15 new republics gained international recognition, and Nagorno-Karabakh was one of them. But what do you think is going to happen now? And is the war in Ukraine maybe got something to do with this? Is it part of the mix? Sorry, it's a lot to unpack there.
I'm not sure if there's a link with Ukraine, but these tensions in this region, which I always think sounds very exciting. Nagorno-Karabakh, it's a bit like the Khyber Pass in my head. But to be serious for a minute, it does seem to be conflicts and tensions that have been going on for decades and seem to flare up sufficiently that they hit the media. And I did see one report on mainstream media on this, where ethnic groups in this region are fighting flares up every now and again. And it seems to be that they turn to Russia to help make a peace on this. So I don't know enough about it to know what the long-term solution is here, but it strikes me that perhaps the more countries internationally should be getting involved in this, and maybe there's a role for the United Nations to perhaps try and knock some heads together here. And I'm not sure if there's not oil involved here somewhere in this region. So that might be, to coin a phrase, and it's very much a pun, fanning the flames of conflict here.
Yeah, I suppose we'll see how this unfolds as time goes on. Our next item is the search for new and improved cancer treatments is to receive a major boost, with Cancer Research UK's largest ever investment in Scotland of up to £123 million. The charity is to provide the funding as part of a 7-year commitment to the Cancer Research UK Scotland Institute, formerly known as the Cancer Research UK Beatson Institute. It will bolster Scotland as a major global hub for cancer research on an increasingly competitive worldwide stage and help the recruitment of international talent. Each year, around 34,100 people are diagnosed with cancer in Scotland, meaning it is vital to find new ways to tackle the disease. While around 16,300 Scots sadly lose their lives to the disease each year, cancer death rates have fallen by 8% over the past decade, largely thanks to research. The funding will underpin long-term cutting-edge discovery research exploring how cancers develop, grow and spread, as well as examining how the immune system can be harnessed to combat the disease. Major studies into specific types of cancer have had a big impact on Scotland's population, including liver, pancreatic, bowel and lung and cancer, and will also be supported. In recognition of the success of the Institute as a national centre of excellence and to enable wider global recognition, the facility will have the new title of Cancer Research UK Scotland Institute. Cancer Research UK invests around £33 million in Scotland each year, including the Cancer Research UK Scotland Institute and grants awarded to research groups at universities across Scotland. Professor Owen Sansom, Director of the Cancer Research UK Scotland Institute, said, "This recognition of the hard work and determination of our researchers to find new ways to tackle cancer, as well as improve current treatments, is a major boost for both future cancer patients in Scotland and for the newly titled Cancer Research UK Scotland Institute. It represents an unprecedented vote of confidence in Scotland's scientific prowess." Scottish Health Secretary Scottish Health Secretary Michael Matheson said, "The Scottish Government recognises that research is essential if new approaches to the prevention, diagnosis and treatment of cancer are to continue being developed. We welcome Cancer Research UK's announcement of renewed funding for the Cancer Research UK Scotland Institute, which demonstrates its success as a national centre of excellence. It is testimony to the excellence and innovation that the Institute delivers, and this funding will help ensure it continues its internationally recognised research work." So Maureen, I'd really here I would just like to call upon your experience as a minister at Holyrood to maybe give us some extra added insight into this funding and this research. Does it hark back to anything when you were in government?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but clearly Cancer Research UK's funding is vital to cancer research throughout the world. It adds value to any government research funding that's taken place. But this is really good news for Scotland and the Beatson Institute, which we've already known is one of the world's leading centres for treating cancer. And you said cancer research is really important. But one thing that I'd like to stress also is that the Scottish Government's Detect Cancers Early programmes are really important as well, because we know that the quicker that you can get a diagnosis of cancer, the better the outcomes can be. So all the programmes like we have, whether it's breast screening, bowel screening, which was introduced in Scotland long before in England, these things are really important. So this is a very good news story for Scotland today.
Thank you, Maureen. The next item is projects providing practical help to support people. I'm going to start that again. Projects providing practical help to support people tackle the growing risks posed by online crime will share a £500,000 fund aimed at ensuring a digitally secure and resilient Scotland. Organisations including Scottish Union Learning and Community Enterprise will use the money to provide workshops aimed at tackling scams and internet safety, deliver training to upskill underrepresented groups into careers within cybersecurity, and provide digital advice in different languages. The projects will be targeted at specific groups, including disabled people and those with specific learning needs, minority ethnic groups, people living in areas of social deprivation or in rural or remote communities, and those for whom English is not their first language. Since 2019-20, cybercrimes, that's crimes committed using the internet, have risen with an estimated 14,890 cybercrimes recorded by Police Scotland in 2022-23. That's almost twice the level in the year before. This £500,000 fund is part of this £500,000 fund is part of a £1.16 million invested by the Scottish Government in 2023-24 to improve preparedness to withstand, defend against, manage and recover quickly from cyber incidents. Justice and Home Affairs Secretary Angela Constance said cybercrimes such as fraud and data theft can have a devastating impact on people, communities and businesses. The Scottish Government is committed to building cyber resilience within all our communities, and this funding will enable many more people across the country keep themselves safe and secure when going online by supporting them to gain practical knowledge and skills to recognise and avoid cyber attacks. We will also continue to work closely with Police Scotland and the National Cyber Security Centre to ensure Scotland's public sector is resilient to cyber threats. Maureen, I was going to ask you again, just to call on your experience in this as a government minister, but maybe the internet wasn't such a big thing when you were part of Holyrood. But this is important, isn't it? I mean, everybody seems to cite Estonia as being a country that considers its cybersecurity as part of securing its borders.
Yes, and increasingly worldwide, cybersecurity takes a bigger slice of police and law and order funding, because a lot of crime has moved online. What particularly pleases me about this story is that the money is going to be targeted to ethnic minority groups, to people with disabilities, and others like that. So I think that's really important, because even if you've got, all your faculties about you, it's really easy to be targeted, or to fall foul of a scam online. And what made me think about, things come up on your social media about, you can earn £5,000, really quickly a week. And I hadn't realised until I heard something on the radio today that can be people looking for drug traffickers and drug mules, and things like that. So, any money that can be spent on helping groups that might be more targeted by these awful criminals is really important. So another good news story from the Scottish Government today.
Yes, and it kind of reminded me of those terrifying public safety information films that I used to get as a boy, and it's like about don't play in abandoned fridges and don't swim in abandoned quarries. So maybe we need something like that to terrify people into paying heed about cybercrime. But I'll move on to the last item actually. Scottish Government ministers will visit Inveraray on Monday the 2nd of October as the Scottish Government's travelling cabinet programme resumes. The Scottish Cabinet will meet at the Inveraray Parish Church before holding a public discussion in the Inveraray Inn to hear about local issues. The 51st meeting of the travelling cabinet will be the first in over 4 years after the programme was halted due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and will be the fourth session to be held in the Argyll and Bute area. Announcing the return of travelling cabinets, First Minister Hamza Yousaf said, "As First Minister, I am looking forward to getting out and about with the Cabinet to meet people in and around Inveraray and listen to their views. I'll be laying out my vision to boost growth, reduce poverty and build a more equal and just society, and look forward to discussing with the people of Argyll and Bute how to achieve this within their local communities." This will be the first of many more Cabinet public discussion events I intend to host, providing an opportunity for local people to engage directly with ministers and to help shape and inform government decision making. Your voice is important and it is vital it is heard. I'm really looking forward to listening to and engaging with the people of Argyll and Bute during this travelling Cabinet session. Maureen, I don't know if you could tell, but I was kind of had to suppress a wee smile there, because it just reading that out about the First Minister and his travelling cabinet, I was just wondering, have you seen this cabinet? Has it got casters? And but I shouldn't be so glib, because it is a serious topic. He's talking about poverty and the like. So I don't know. So when you were in government, was there anything similar? And if there wasn't, do you think it would have been useful?
No, there was. There definitely was. And as well as that, when parliamentary committees are taking evidence, they often went out and about. And that kind of has fallen away a bit because of COVID and the pure cost, of getting the TV, the broadcasting system out, and security officers and all that kind of thing. But to go back to the cabinet, I'm really glad that it's starting to hold cabinet out with Edinburgh again, because it was really, really useful. We went as ministers or cabinet secretaries to visit various places in relation to our portfolios at points during the day, then had cabinet, and as you said, then had a public meeting at night. So in a place like Inverary, you can meet a hell of a lot of people in one day with so many cabinet ministers, cabinet secretaries there. So and having a public meeting, I think, is really great because, you know, you and I, Brian, know that the mainstream media have been, you know, punting this SNP bad so much in recent times. In recent times, it's really important that people can make up their own minds by seeing government in action in their hometowns.
Thank you for that, Maureen, and it's a good way to end the show. The other thing that I wasn't sure about was how to pronounce Inverary. Isn't there a really posh, sort of aristocratic pronunciation, which I couldn't recall? Do you know?
I don't know, Ken.
No, I don't know either. Okay. Well, once again, thank you for joining us this evening, Maureen. We really appreciate it. But we'll let you get on with what's left of the evening.
Thank you.
Well, that is it for this evening, but before I go, I just want to remind you that here at Broadcasting Scotland, as you know, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. So to everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, we thank you very much. You know that our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please do consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. Our need to reach our £30,000 target to pay our bills is pressing. However, the generosity of you, our supporters, has given us a little more time. We've now raised over £17,300 and we are able to continue making programmes for the next few weeks. But our need to raise the remaining £12,700 is still really urgent. So I'll leave you with good night and thank you for watching.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Lewis McGlynn.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Saoirse Healy.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Donald C. Stewart. Broadcasting Scotland is Scotland's independent broadcaster, providing factual news, reporting on the issues important to the people of Scotland.
We are committed to public service broadcasting, and with your support, we will produce even more programmes.
Provide opportunities for young people interested in media production and broadcasting, and challenge preconceptions of what Scottish media looks like, amplifying Scotland's voice and reflecting its communities.
We can already deliver high-quality live news, and we will create the highest quality programmes for you to enjoy, but we can only do that with your support.
So please subscribe to and share our channel or donate to Broadcasting Scotland via the link in the description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.